So
okay, go ahead. I'm ready.
Rock Breath, it's good to see you. And I learned that actually is his real name, Rock Breath.
I don't know what to say about that.
Okay, we're streaming. We're up. We're good to go. Let me do one thing that Ben Boychuk will remind me of in half a second.
Why am I the only one? Wait, why are Jude and I the only ones not wearing headphones?
Well, you don't like to wear headphones.
Okay. Do you like to wear headphones? You obviously don't.
It's harder to move around when they're on.
Yeah,
I can hear better this way.
Everybody's stable. I'm the one sitting, standing up.
I was concussed. I was concussed when I played quarterback for Gallaudet. So
okay, Lewis.
Okay, it's out. Let's go.
Okay.
Okay, you guys ready?
I am ready, sir.
Okay, welcome back to The World According to Ben Stein. I'm Judah Friedman. Thank you for joining us. If this is your first time, please subscribe to the YouTube channel, The World According to Ben Stein. Like us on Facebook at The World According to Ben Stein, and follow us on Parler at Ben Stein. Tell your friends, tell your loved ones, tell your enemies. Just tell them, darn it. Joining us once again is the other Ben Boychuk, managing editor of American Greatness. Good seeing you, Ben.
Great to be back. Thanks.
And of course,
what does your button say?
It says it's from 74. It says impeach the press.
Oh, very funny. Very funny.
That is very funny. And of course, let's welcome our resident historian and Nixon trivia king, the man, Lewis Esoteric Fine. Greetings, Lewis.
Good to be here.
And of course,
you're quite funny. You're quite funny.
I love how Ben. You can never blame Ben Boychuk. You can never blame me for the openings. I get interrupted. And of course, the man of the hour, author, economist, Emmy Award winner, America's humble servant, and one of Parler's fastest growing people, Benjamin Jeremy Stein.
Power to the people.
And I don't know how that's to be taken these days, but I want to welcome everybody listening on YouTube and watching us on YouTube, and I want to welcome everybody that'll be watching us later after we've posted it. One of the things we're going to be talking about tonight, we're going to be talking about a few separate things, but most importantly, Ben, you posted something this morning about how near socialism we are and how easily it could get there. And it literally skyrocketed on Parler. And I'll just, it's a frightening thought when you sent that text to me last night, when you sent the post to me last night of what you wanted to say. I got to admit, I was frightened by it a little bit. And I'll let you go, Ben.
Well, what I've observed from my study of history is, which is I'm sure nowhere near as good as Mr. Lewis here, is that movements which end up in dictatorship, even the cruelest dictatorship, begin by saying, we're going to make people's lives better. We're going to even out class differences. We're going to give people equal rights. We're going to take away the privileges of the oligarchy, and we're going to share the riches of the oligarchy with the ordinary citizen. These all wind up being dictatorships. No dictatorship ever begins by saying, things are pretty good as they are. We'll just make a few changes around the edges, and then we'll just keep going on the way we're going on. There has to be a promise of some kind of drastic equalization, some kind of drastic fix for the downtrodden masses. And then we get dictatorship, war, starvation, bombing, pestilence. That's what we get from cries for extreme social justice. We do not get that from people saying, just go ahead with business as usual. I am endlessly in mind of, I think it was Calvin Coolidge, but I'm sure Mr. Lewis Fine will correct me if I'm wrong, who said, America's business is business. And when you start saying America's business is equality and fighting systematic or systemic racism, you're well down the path towards dictatorship. And that scares me. I believe we are well down that path. I believe that persons like AOC and other persons in the Democrat Party and even some in the Republican Party, like Mr. Romney, are leading us down the path towards dictatorship when they cry out for social justice.
Brilliant. And Ben Boychik, we brought this up the other night, and I was saying to you, Ben, and it's really hard to believe that they are not just naming names yet, but they're collecting names.
They're collecting
terrifying.
Yeah, and so there's a website. So over the weekend, I'm sure everybody who's watching us or listening to us now is probably familiar with Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez's plea on Twitter for somebody to archive the names of people who aided and abetted the Trump regime. And so, and originally there was a Google document that was public and openly available to anybody who wanted to look at it. Well, there seems to have been a huge backlash on that because a lot of the people who were behind this thing protected their Twitter accounts, and that Google Doc is no longer available, but they still have a website. It's called trumpaccountability.net, and where they're signing people up for updates, and I'm sure they're fundraising like mad. And, but for the moment where I was able to take a look at that document, it had names not just of high officials from the Trump administration. They went all the way down to secretaries and stenographers and calligraphers even. And every single person who somehow was in the employ of the Trump administration, in the opinion of the left, they're complicit in an evil.
You forgot donors, by the way.
Oh, well, I'm getting to that. But obviously they're very interested in going after Trump's donors, not just the big ones like Sheldon Adelson in Las Vegas, but anybody and everyone. And it reminds me, this isn't exactly the first time we've seen something like this, because if you're a Californian, you might remember the 2008 Proposition 8 campaign, which was a ballot initiative, constitutional amendment that would have defined marriage between a man and a woman. Okay. And there was a massive backlash toward that. And within weeks after that campaign was over, and the measure passed, but it was ultimately tossed in court, you could go online. There was a website that took information from donors and overlaid it over a map. And so the names and addresses of people who gave money to that campaign were out for anybody to find and do whatever they wanted to do. And so this is the danger.
Terrifying.
Yes, it is. Very much so. Very much so. And by the way, it's almost like you give these folks just a little bit of taste of power, just a little bit, and suddenly they start dreaming of retribution. And so I want to mention this before I cede back my time.
Gestapo tactics.
Well, get a load of this. I mean, Ben, you're old enough to remember World War I.
Easily.
Tomorrow.
The Democratic lieutenant governor of Wisconsin on Twitter Monday night cited the news that Mitch McConnell had said, I got to find it. Where'd it go? I got to find it. Shoot. Oh, I know where it is. Hold on. Sorry. The news from the New York Times, breaking news: Senator Mitch McConnell threw his support behind President Trump's refusal to concede the election, declining to recognize Joe Biden's victory, to which the Democratic lieutenant governor of Wisconsin, Mandela Barnes, said,
"Wait a minute, what kind of a name is that?"
It's a crazy name. This is sedition.
What?
Yeah, this is sedition. And I thought to myself, I could hear, the attorneys general of Woodrow Wilson groaning from hell, because the last time we had widespread sedition trials in this country was World War I.
Right after World War I. Right after.
Well, yeah, right after, and in the midst of, because remember the Schenck case, Charles Schenck versus the United States.
Skank.
Is it Skank?
Yeah.
God, I'm blasted. Well, all right, I got that screwed up. Thank you for the correction.
Sure.
Was convicted because why? Because he was handing out anti-draft literature. And so now we find ourselves, you know, at a time where people who supported this president, duly elected president for the past 4 years, are being targeted with all kinds of made up stuff, sedition, you know, treason for all we know. And so it's, yeah, you're right. It's a very, very terrifying.
It's terrible, but I don't understand. What is Miss Mandela calling sedition? Having worked for Mr. Trump?
No, in this instance, it's Mitch McConnell saying he's not willing to.
That is considered sedition.
Well, by this lunatic in Wisconsin, sure.
I mean,
to go by the laws of mathematical and economic statistics is sedition. That is insane. This woman, this sounds like a woman who has a very, very devious but clever sense of humor. Like, she can't have been serious.
No, Ben, she is serious. And that's why, listen, I don't like scaring you like this, and I don't like terrifying you like this. But the reality is, Ben, these people are real.
Oh, by the way, I should correct correction. It's a dude. It's not a woman. Mandela Barnes is a guy.
I beg your pardon.
Dude looks like a lady. And on that note, Lewis, I know you wanted to jump in.
Yes, and I shan't be interrupted. I'll do an inverse on the Tony Campello's Good Friday in Easter sermon, where he said it's Friday, but Sunday's coming. Tomorrow may be the 11th day of the 11th month of the 11th hour in which we commemorate the Pomerades, the disaster that was the Wilson presidency, the imprisonment of Eugene Debs for his politics. But today, ladies and gentlemen, is the 245th birthday of, no, not Ben Stein, the 245th birthday of the Marines.
Oh, right on. Right on. Right on.
So Wednesday may be coming, but today's Tuesday. So a few things. One, with regard to Mr. Boychuk, you did not mention, and this is through no fault of your own, that the Prop 8 campaign resulted in the firing or resignation of the then head of Mozilla, which is the nonprofit entity behind the Firefox browser. I use Safari. Thank you very much. And that is why I am opposed to the public listing of names of people who contribute to political campaigns. There should be some other way to verify that it is legal, that the person is a citizen, and thereafter that his or her identity is private, because while it may be a criminal or civil offense to use one's politics against someone, there is no guarantee that a company will protect a worker. The public will respect a person's privacy unless that privacy is protected. So if you give to a campaign, I believe that if you meet certain criteria, you can. With Parler, for example, if you furnish your ID and you establish that you are who you claim to be, then that information is shredded and you go about your business. We should have something in place that ensures the privacy of political donors, because people came for this person based on the fact that he contributed to this campaign, which is not to suggest that he is anti-gay. He may simply believe that gay marriage as a legal institution is something he is opposed to, while he is in favor of civil unions. I don't know what his politics are, and I don't care to know, but he has a right to have his privacy and his employment protected from those who seek reprisals. Second point.
That was a long first point, so make this.
Yeah, sure.
Well, I understand, but please, and I'm maintaining continence.
Please.
Joe Biden is not a socialist. He is from the credit card state. He was, until President Obama named him as his running mate. He was the senior senator from the credit card state. He voted for George W. Bush's horrible, in my opinion, bankruptcy bill that was passed by a Republican Congress, along with a vote from Mr. Poverty himself, champion of the poor, John Edwards. What Joe Biden is a supporter of, what Kamala Harris is a supporter of, is inflammatory rhetoric on the social side that may very well be socialistic. I would not be surprised to see him do things that are favorable to universities that the Trump administration has implemented by way of Secretary, is it Davos?
Yes, it's Betsy Davos. And on that
DeVos.
note,
It's
and on
DeVos.
DeVos.
and on that note, if you just tuned in, you are listening to The World According to Ben Stein. Ben Boychuk, can you please tell people where they could find us?
Well, if you're watching this, you're almost certainly watching it on YouTube. Please subscribe if you haven't already, and please share and tell your friends that we're on YouTube for the time being. And we really want to build up our subscription base here. Like us on Facebook, for now, before we get banned and who knows, tracked down, arrested, in prison, I don't know. But above all, most importantly, do follow us on Parler. Tell your friends to follow us on Parler at Ben Stein.
Thank you.
That was extremely uplifting, Ben. I want to welcome everybody back to The World According to Ben Stein. And I just wanted people to know, when we first thought of this, the idea was, Ben had brought up a while ago that I was his Boswell, and we were going to really just sort of chronicle the amazing things and places, the Gumpian life that Ben has lived, and then the election and all of this aftermath has come. And that seems like a little more important right now to from somebody like Ben Stein, to teach people and to show people why history is so important and a role it's playing right now, and what we need to protect and fight for, Ben.
Well, I think what we need to protect and fight for is something which has occurred only very rarely in all of human history, which is the individual's freedom protected by law. That did not exist for the overwhelming majority of man's history. It is only very recently, and it's only in a small part of the world, that it has existed. We are rapidly on the path of taking it away, and we're taking it away in the name of what sounds like an excellent social program, namely racial equality. And we all want racial equality. We all want everyone to be equal before the law when he or she goes before a court in the United States of America. I don't know a single person who doesn't want that, and I know lots of people. But in that pursuit of that noble goal, we are taking away a lot of people's freedom, and we are accusing people on the flimsiest of evidence, or no evidence at all, of what has seemingly become the worst crime in the history of mankind, namely racism. And we are taking away a person's right to speak. And now I'm going to give you an example. I have a friend, a very, very, very nice friend, a little overweight, very nice, who was speaking to a very big conservative, very thin, but big time conservative. And he used a very, 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 very non-racist term to describe African Americans. And he was told, even by this very, very conservative friend, that could not be done because it would get too much hate mail. And I said, okay, that's the end of free speech. And it scares me to death. When I was in school, I'm, as you all are endlessly pointing out, I'm the oldest one on the panel by a lot.
Not by a lot.
By a lot. Well, quite a lot. I don't know how old Lewis is, but anyway, by quite a bit. Even our teachers used to use pejorative terms for African American people. The students did all the time, and many of the time, I got a bloody nose for telling my classmates not to use the N-word. But I would rather that than have my freedom taken away from me and have me be an object of scorn and ridicule just on suspicion of having views of some races are different from other races. That is the end of free speech, and that is happening right now, and it's very, very scary.
So I want you to explain people quickly, because a lot of people don't realize this, right? Venezuela, not that long ago, was quite the wealthy place. People did
Yes.
very
Yes.
well for themselves. And then
Yes.
what happened?
Well, they had a lot of oil. I think Venezuela is believed, and I could be wrong about this, I'm sure Lewis would know better, to have more oil than Saudi Arabia. It's a low-grade oil, but it's oil. And they were a prosperous country. And under socialism, it has been wrecked, run into the ground. It's poverty-stricken in large part, not entirely by any means, but there are prison camps all over the place. There's a secret police. It has been wrecked by socialism, supposedly in the guise of uplifting the poor and making them into middle-class citizens. No program that ever calls for doing that by compulsory means ever works or turns out to be anything but a dictatorship. I would much go back a little bit. I would much rather see a country with serious social differences, as long as no one's starving and no one's being homeless, than to see any kind of dictatorship. Dictatorships are terrible, scary things. We're moving in that direction fast.
Before I get back to Lewis, I just wanted people to realize Donald Trump in Florida had, what was it, about a 250,000 vote extra, 250,000 more than he did last time. That's all the immigrants that have escaped countries that are scared to death of the Democrats and where they're headed right now. This isn't just certain people. We have people in this country who have escaped Venezuela, who have escaped Cuba, who've escaped Puerto Rico. And I know that are looking at this right now going, please, God, don't let these Democrats take charge, because they know what lists are. They know what all the things Ben Boychuk brought up. And Lewis, I'll get back to you now.
Yeah, well, Venezuela is a member of OPEC. So think about the level of incompetence and it's the only whitish member of OPEC.
Point. That's a great point. The incompetence of having oil and being broke.
Yeah. And look, I mean, there's no way, we're not going to lie. People, I'm sure people realize this right now. They're looking at the panel. We lost Remzo. We lost him.
What do you mean? We what?
So the socialists, they came for him. They came for him.
He's joking.
I want to say something, and that is this. There was a time where if you said burn it down and you were on television saying that, you were probably in handcuffs or on your way to being escorted into a police car.
Or into a mental hospital.
And now you're paid to sit before a panel on MSNBC, like Jennifer Rubin, and say calmly, we need to burn the Republican Party down. We need to deny, I'm paraphrasing, we need to deny anyone associated with the Trump administration an opportunity to work or to feed their family ever again. We need to murder them. We need to torture them. I'm taking some liberties.
No, essentially, Ben, what he's saying is correct. He's basically saying what they're really thinking, because when you take away somebody's job, when you try to separate families, what are people going to do? What is the future in that for people? Sorry, Lewis, go ahead.
Very upsetting. Very, very upsetting. Terribly upsetting.
And that's why I said, I want to clarify.
Very upsetting.
I want to clarify a point that I said on an earlier show about the phenomenon of anti-Semitism without Jews, which happened in Poland during the late 70s, and that is when eventually you run out of Jews, and that's what happened there. And they instead, when dissent endured and dissidents refused to silence themselves, they were called, even though they weren't Jewish, they were called "quote unquote" Zionists. For one person to simply say, who also happens to be a Democrat, that's excessive, that's immoral, that's wrong, that may even be criminal, I guarantee you that person will soon be labeled a Trumpster. Even though that person never voted for Donald Trump, even though that person is a critic of Donald Trump, even though that person has never voted for a Republican, period. It is only a matter of time until the accusation is leveled. You are a Trumpster.
It's a brilliant point.
Very scary, I must say. And it's funny, I was about to say to you, Lewis, that I'm living a very comfortable life and cheerfully living a life. After we're through with this, I'm going to make salmon for my wife. But then I thought to myself, well, wait a minute. I have been essentially blacklisted here in Hollywood for being a Republican. And if were it not for the fact that I have some teeny tiny bits of savings, I wouldn't know how to feed my family. So that's exactly right. That's the title. Totally right.
Ben Boychuk?
To paraphrase the great Glenn Reynolds of Instapundit fame, they said if I voted for Trump, I would get authoritarianism, and they were right. I think that's what we're really in for. And it's a kind of there are different brands of despotism, right? There's soft despotism and there's hard despotism. And I think we're going to maybe get a little bit of a combination of the two. The social pressures, but not just that, because really the idea behind something like the so-called Trump Accountability Project is to make it easy to encourage would-be employers, for example, to go onto this database and say, oh, you supported that guy. Oh, you worked for that guy. And this is a much harder form, because that's kind of been going around. A friend of mine worked for the George W. Bush administration, and it took him a while to he finally got one. He's got a pretty good one now. I won't say where he works, but he's got a pretty good gig. But it took him a little while after he got out of the Bush White House. There's some people who saw that on his resume and certain big corporations and said, you may not make a very good fit here. So this is a lot harder edge than that, much harder edge than that.
Again, a very frightening thing, and especially, but as I was saying, all done in the guise of increasing freedom, increasing equality, increasing the well-being of the ordinary citizen, when what in fact is happening is the beginnings well down the road to a dictatorship that's going to lead to the kind of incompetence that we were just talking about a few minutes ago. When we say we are a country, I believe the U.S. at this point must have mostly the largest quantum of oil of any country in the world, and we're soon going to be in problems in terms of oil because of the environmentalists. So it is really happening, and I will tell you, in my own humble life, my own pathetic fat person's life, a few years ago I was supposed to do a commercial, a very well-paid commercial by my modest standards, and I was kicked off it because it was alleged that I was not sufficiently pro-environmentalist. And because I had said, I thought it was perfectly fine for people to drive internal combustion engine cars. I was kicked off that. And that was a substantial loss for my little family. And so it's happening right now. It's already happening. And that was, I think Bush was president when that happened. So imagine what it's going to be like in the horrible, I hope unlikely event that the election, the fake election of the fake president is finalized.
Ben Boychuk, I saw you raising your hand.
Well, if there's any small consolation in this, it's that, as you may recall from the 60s and early 70s, Ben, the chief enemy of the new left was not conservatives, but liberals. And that it's already the case. We're seeing it in a few places, and you're seeing it not just online, but also in hotspots like Portland, that the left, the hard left, is already complaining about, the prospects of this neoliberal corporate Biden administration. So, they do tend to eat themselves, but at the same time, there's very much this thirst for vengeance that they've got is a danger to us all. The other consolation that you mentioned last night, Ben Stein, is that people are going to be sorting themselves out. They're going to be, Trump voters are going to be looking for refuge in states that do not include Idaho, and please don't anybody move to Idaho. But other states like Nebraska, for example, or Wyoming or Tennessee. Tennessee, I hear, is very nice, but not Idaho. Idaho is a frozen wasteland that nobody should ever visit ever, please.
What about Big Bear?
Big Bear is Big Bear's pretty good. There's some sane folks up here.
And I want to get back to a point that, and I want to get this after the break, is because Lewis brought up a point that's, that's you can't emphasize enough. And, there was obviously we have the REM song, which was, what's the frequency, Kenneth, right? Which was about Dan Rather, right? Walking through the park. And there was no normalization. And I remember when Dan Rather fabricated that news report about George Bush, he was gone. And we've come to a point in our media where there is no normalization anymore. Sort of what Lewis was saying is the inmates have run the asylum. It is literally like watching One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. And there is nobody calling them out. There is nobody checking these people. And that's where we're headed right now. As Lewis said, if anybody would disagree with any of these people, they would be considered Trump supporters. If on one of those panels, one person got up and said, you know what, I agree with all of you, but we can't, make people lose their livings, they would be ostracized in a second. And that's the path we're headed on. And the point is tonight to fight back, because we have to fight back. And if
how do we fight back? I think we write all we can into the places that will still take our work. We appear on TV all we can. We encourage our friends and our children, and in my case, grandchildren, to fight back and to believe in America. I mean, I want my son, who's a wonderful, wonderful young man, to teach our granddaughter, who's a wonderful, wonderful young girl, that this is the greatest country in the world, and its foundation is freedom. Its foundation is not demanding equality for everyone. Its foundation is freedom. Freedom, freedom, freedom. That's the foundation.
And if you just tuned in, you are listening to The World According to Ben Stein in a more, can you, Ben Boychuk, can you tell us in a happier way how to find us?
Yes, of course. Watch us, subscribe to us on YouTube, click the bell, subscribe to us so you make sure you never miss an episode. Like us on Facebook, which is a wonderful platform. And by all means, most importantly, follow us on Parler @Ben Stein.
God bless you.
I want to welcome everybody back to The World According to Ben Stein. And I think we're rubbing off on you, Ben Boychuk. And I'll just leave that for people to think what I mean by that.
Thousands of years. I'm going to rip off a line from John Lukács. Thousands of years of Central European pessimism flow through my veins.
Okay, so maybe you're rubbing off on us. But I want to welcome everybody back to The World According to Ben Stein. And we have to have a little levity in these extremely dark and serious times. And you asked a question, how do we fight back? I'm just going to bring this up because I love that you went after Mitt Romney. I love that you went after him. And let me just say this about Ben. He was not a fan with the dog on top of the roof.
Oh my God.
That
was incredible. That's incredible.
And it's our job to fight Republicans that don't stand up for the president. And it's our job to remember who they are and to not name names. That's what's great about it. You could vote them out of office.
Well, it's our job, I think, to say this president, who he has his faults, he's not a perfect being. And there's only one perfect being that I am aware of, and that is my wife. But that this human being, Donald Trump, while he has his faults, is as formidable a champion of freedom as there has ever been in my lifetime. And he has done more for the Republican Party than any Republican in my lifetime. He has really, really reached deep into the soul of America and gotten people who might otherwise not have voted, not wanted to think that they had anybody on their wavelength, Kenneth, and he has gotten them to be Republicans. Nobody else did that. Even my favorite, Mr. Nixon, didn't do it as well as Mr. Trump. He has done an incredible job,
Lewis?
Not for all the money in the world am I going to rub off Mitt Romney. I want to make a point about religion, because it's relevant to this discussion. There is no such thing as no religion. There is, however, something known as a worse religion. There are things worse than Christianity and Judaism, and we are seeing this with this movement, which has a tyrannical or totalitarian mindset. It is a religion. It is a religion that is malicious and has charity for none. And that is why it is not content simply to have power or to acquire and consolidate power. It also needs to ensure that its critics or opponents, and yes, its many enemies, because they have a never-ending list of enemies, are unemployable, have no means to support themselves, and thus are not only denied or deprived of the right to pursue happiness, they should starve, and they should not have the chance to pursue a livelihood, and they should be miserable. And there is no forgiveness, there is no charity, there is no redemption.
And Ben brought that up, and actually people have brought that up on YouTube tonight. It really is. I don't want to use a specific, let's say it's a higher power. This lack of a higher power in our country, or a spirituality, is absolutely terrifying. And I think this has led us down a path of people searching out for drugs, people searching out for so many different things. And people that are searching are so, it's like, oh, come to the climate wars. And that's their religion, right? That's, if you don't believe in what they're saying, you're going to go to climate, which they want to jail people. They really want to jail people that don't, believe in the orthodoxy of climate change, Ben Boychuk.
That is correct. And that's been true for a while too. I mean, this is the thing. This is what we always worry about. I hate to be now, the Central European pessimism thing from a minute ago, notwithstanding. I don't think we should govern our lives by fear. I really don't. But for God's sake, when they tell you what they want to do, maybe we should believe them. And so,
great point.
Yeah. So somebody in the comics, Eric, Amy, I hope I'm pronouncing your last name right, Eric.
You are.
He mentioned earlier in our comments how the Tea Party groups got sicked upon by the IRS during the Obama administration. I think what we should be thinking about right now, and I've been thinking about this a lot when it comes to my publication, American Greatness. I'm thinking about this really more than even the outcome of the election over this past week, is what are we going to be doing for the next 6 months, 12 months, 24 months? How do we adapt to becoming essentially, what is the opposition? We're not going to be the resistance and whine like bitches for the next 4 years. We're going to do stuff. We're going to do good stuff. We're going to try to advance an agenda and try to work to create, to build on the movement that's been created over the past 4.5 years.
What is our agenda? What is our agenda?
Well, how about this? I mean, one of the things, Trump ran on certain specific things, but the overarching thing was he was the first Republican to run in, let's say, 2 decades, who was actually, well, maybe 2.5, who was actually sincere about making the Republican Party a party of workers, of vindicating the interests of the middle class. The cliche, and it's still very prominent, is that the Republicans were always the party of the rich and the Democrats were the party of the people. But we know that's very clearly not true, since the vast majority of their support and donations come from oligarchs in Silicon Valley and hedge fund guys.
Silicon.
I've been to Silicon Valley, and my God, is it a paradise?
I don't want to go to Silicon Valley at all.
You know what? It
in Van Nuys,
seems
right?
real. It seems
There are
real.
so many different jokes.
You can't even tell the difference.
There are so many jokes on that. Anyways,
You know what the funny thing is tonight I have replaced Judah as the guy who butchers pronunciation of every little thing.
I know, you've got full ebonics.
So I want to hear more of what our agenda is, because I think that's a really important thing to do. My sister, God bless her soul, she's been a wonderful sister. I love her a lot. I love her still a lot. She was working for the resistance since Mr. Trump became president. And I never could understand, and maybe I'm sure it's my fault, what her agenda was except getting rid of Trump. I want to know what our agenda is. I know what I would like our agenda to be. It starts with pro-life. Mm-hmm. If you cannot say that life is sacred, the most innocent life possible, life that has not even been born cannot possibly have had an opportunity to commit a sin because it has not been born, that if that life has no rights whatsoever, we're after that, it's all downhill.
Well, and let's not forget that Donald Trump was the first president in U.S. history since this began and back in the early 1970s, to actually show up to the March for Life in Washington.
No, actually, I believe, with the greatest possible respect to you, a man whom I respect a great deal, I believe that Mr. Reagan did that.
No, he did not. He did. He delivered a live address, audio address. He never physically showed up.
God bless you. I respect your erudition, so I'm sure you're right.
And also, your sister, she's dead to me.
She's a wonderful, wonderful woman.
I'm sitting shiva right now.
She's a wonderful woman. I love her a lot.
No, but this was Ben Stein. Yes. I mean, because Reagan was an immensely influential pro-life president who buoyed that movement, but he only appeared on, was it video or audio? Lewis?
Audio,
or, yeah.
I mean, certainly audio. There may have been some kind of video, but he never physically was there. Yeah,
Trump showed up. He showed up and was in the crowd. So so that's to his credit. He actually walked the walk, and so good for him. But I agree with you. But quite beyond that, I mean, there are economic interests involved here, and so Trump, many if not most of Trump's policies were aimed at, one way or another, trying to help the middle class, which has been steadily eroded by any number of policies over the past 30 odd years. And Republicans have paid lip service to some of those things, but Trump was the first president in a long, long time to actually deliver on a lot of those things.
And how did he do that? I just would like to know how he did that, because if you're going to give us a good list, I think that is a part of the basis of our agenda.
Well, tax bill for one thing. I think that tax. What's your take on the tax reform?
I would like to see very, very, very high taxes on rich Democrats.
Sure. Well, no. How about this? I mean, because part of our problem, and I don't think this is too far afield, and I think it's actually on point. Since we've been talking about the prospects of censorship all night, why not tax the crap out of big tech companies after they make a certain amount of revenue?
Because I have stock in some.
Oh. So
what I would, by the way, getting back to Ben's question about agenda, I would go back to the First Amendment. I know
yes.
That is the biggest agenda. If God willing, Trump could pull this out, that he should be setting his sights on is First Amendment.
With respect, Ben Stein, with respect, Richard Nixon in, what was it, 72, 73, Lewis, you can back me on this. I mean, when did he say, he had that long bit about, the press is the enemy, right? The press is the enemy. The media is the enemy.
He said it more than once.
Many times. And believe me, if you think he said it in public a lot, he said it in private quite often too.
Big tech is the enemy. Big tech is the enemy because big tech is in a position to influence your behavior in terms of the things you buy, the things you see, the things you think. But big tech is also in a position to literally censor the president of these United States. Big tech is the enemy. Big tech has to be brought to heel. I'm not sure how you bring them to heel other than through punitive measures, whether it's regulation or you tax the crap out of them after some point.
Yeah, you can't do it. It can't be done by any means that we know of now, except I think a court decision or something in Congress after the present the upcoming 2 years is over, which brings them under the Constitution and says they are so large and so much like government that rights of free speech rights apply to them too.
I think the most frightening thing is if they could do it to the president, they could do it to us a lot easier.
You bet.
And I think that's one of the most frightening things that Ben Boychuk is bringing up and Lewis has brought up and everybody's brought up is when they censor the president of the United States, us little,
pictures,
IRS, I mean, whatever they have in their arsenal, they could easily unleash on us. And that's a frightening thing. And I agree with Ben. I mean, I agree with Ben Boychuk that if Trump gets 4 years, he's got to figure out something with big tech. I mean, they have become a public enemy number one, Ben.
Well, they may, none of you except Lewis and me are, as a lawyer, and but lawyers can change things by litigating and getting a court to agree to change things. And it is possible that a court might very well say, just as they completely made up the right to abortion, which wasn't in any constitutional document, they might be able to make up a right to free speech as against big tech. So they could, it's quite possible that they could do that.
And if you just tuned in, you are listening to The World According to Ben Stein. Ben Boychuk in a livelier way. And thank you for throwing me under the bus before. Can you please tell us how people, how they can find us?
Oh, anytime, Lewis. Or it's not, Jesus God. Oh my God.
Lewis is
we look alike. We all look alike. I get it. I get it. But I slice sturgeon and he makes furs.
Heaven, Judah.
Anyways,
right.
Please tell people.
Anyway, you can certainly subscribe to us, watch us on YouTube, click that bell, subscribe, and share these videos all day long. Like us on Facebook if you wouldn't mind, and of course, follow us above all on Parler at Ben Stein.
And I want to welcome everybody back to The World According to Ben Stein. And let me just say this because a lot of people ask this. Why are we not on certain places? We will be getting on certain places. The reason we're on YouTube is because we're able to stream from Zoom to YouTube. So if anybody asks why we're on YouTube, that is the answer. It's between Facebook. We can't get off of all social medias. We have to still be like part of like, Lewis every night watches YouTube. I mean, I can't see Lewis giving up YouTube.
Ben, you awake?
I'm just amazed that you stay up all night watching YouTube. Are you sure you said YouTube or you porn?
Well, it's hard to tell that. I don't know. I don't wear my glasses at night. You have to ask my wife. She does the sheets.
Oh, Ben Stein, if only I can't tell the story, but yeah. Should I tell the story?
Sure.
Okay, this is a true story. Ben and I were at a bat mitzvah. This has got to be 16 years ago. And
no, about 10 years ago.
No, 15 years ago, I believe.
Oh, okay.
I could be wrong. And or 10, whatever it was. And Ben is sort of getting berated by the rabbi, who's one of these communist sort of rabbis, and which is an oxymoron in most Reform synagogues. And I started telling him about a certain.
No, we went outside. I couldn't stand being in the room anymore. I said, "Let's go for a walk."
Yes, and I brought up to him, and I introduced him to a certain site that he didn't watch at all. But we had a discussion about.
I watch it all the time. I'm kidding. I don't watch it all the time. I have to sleep sometimes.
And let's get back to it, Lewis, about YouTube, because people are like, get off of YouTube, and you can't get off of everything. We need to be.
I've managed to get off on YouTube. So listen, here's the problem, and it's a legal point. I'm going to give you a number. 24 years. It's been 24 years since President Clinton signed via a Republican Congress the Telecommunications Act. Every year that goes by is another year for courts that have already ruled on these issues to strengthen the notion of precedent, unless or until Congress amends the provisions, specific provisions in the Telecommunications Act of 1996, from 1996, that exempt these tech companies or provides an exemption so they're not classified as publishers. There is either going to have to be another trial, which will then be a test case that will be appealed and maybe make it to the Supreme Court, where the Supreme Court will rule favorably for the people as opposed to these specific corporations, or Congress will have to act. We have gone from Clinton, Bush, Obama, Trump, maybe Trump again, and we've had Republican-controlled Congresses and Democratic-controlled Congresses. There has been no change in that legislation. Why do you think there's been no change? Could it be possibly that Speaker Pelosi, Minority Leader Pelosi, Speaker Pelosi again, is from San Francisco and represents part of the technorati? Could it be that both sides receive a great deal of donations from large or big tech corporations? You need to change this bill, because as the years accumulate, the courts will say, you're asking us now to legislate. This has been on the books for 15, 20, 30, 40 years. Why should we act as congressmen?
But they do it all the time, Lewis. You know it very well. They do it all the time. It's called legal realism, and they do it all the time. And I was kidding about watching you porn all the time. I don't watch it all the time. But anyway, but with all due respect, it's a joke. It's a joke. We're allowed to make jokes here. We are not yet part of the communist networks. We are a free network. With greatest respect, courts do stand up to what they call precedent. Precedent is meaningless. Precedent to today's courts, it means as much as a piece of paper meant to the Fuhrer. He said he would sign anything, do anything, put on any kind of act to get what he wanted. And that's the same is true. I mean, a court that really wants to make the freedom of speech a real thing will just laugh at precedent and will say, no, it didn't mean that. It meant this. They do that all the time. Lewis, you know that. You went to law.
Well, we're talking about thought crimes. We're talking about tyranny. We're talking about totalitarianism, and it's a very auspicious time to talk about that, because it's the anniversary, as it was yesterday, and it continues through this week, of Kristallnacht. There are people that I'm not lodging criticism, but there are people that are not aware of what it was. So tell us.
You bet. When the Nazis were running Germany, they had a strict anti-Semitic platform in every way they possibly could. Did everything they could to torture and humiliate Jews. Then in 1938, a Jewish refugee shot and killed an attaché at the German embassy in Paris. And the Nazis used that as an excuse to launch a wild attack on the Jews of Germany, burning down a huge number of synagogues, torturing and beating to death a large number of Jews, imprisoning them, putting them to death while they're in prison, whipping them, in some cases whipping them so hard that they died of blood loss from being whipped so hard. And it was called Kristallnacht because so many windows of Jewish-owned shops were smashed and lay in the gutter, glittering in the gutter, glittering on the sidewalk like pieces of crystal. And it's so interesting you bring this up. Of course, it's the anniversary of Kristallnacht, a terrible, terrible thing. And of course, you know who spoke out against it, but did not do anything big against it. Something, but nothing big, was FDR, who said, FDR, the great hero of American Jews, who said America was basically made for Northern European Protestants and everybody else is just here on our sufferance. And so we're not going to really go crazy about the Jews. They did do some diplomatic punishment of Germany. It didn't accomplish a damned thing.
But don't forget Ambassador Kennedy. He was a voice. You close your eyes and you could hear the Yiddishkeit.
Yeah, Ambassador Kennedy, the father of John F. Kennedy, father of Teddy Kennedy, he was a raging anti-Semite, raging pro-Hitler, madman, and somehow that was all forgiven and forgotten.
It always is. Everything. It
always is. It always is.
You know, it's like waking up a Democrat, and I got to be honest with you guys, I'm jealous because sometimes you wake up, you have a thought. And that thought that day is however you see the world, however you want the world to be, what you thought the day before didn't matter. You know, you could live however you want to live with zero moral compass. And I guess there's a certain freedom in living with zero moral compass, but that's just in my humble opinion. Ben Boychuk, what are your thoughts on that? Because it's like every day they have a different opinion. Every day something changes.
Well, no, I differ on this a little bit. It's actually maybe a little bit worse than that, because I think that
You don't differ, you enhance.
well, I differ slightly, because I don't think it's the case that many of my friends who are Democrats lack a moral compass. I think they lack a common civic vocabulary. And I think that a great part of the problem that we have right now, and it's only going to get worse as we enter the age of Biden and Harris, is that we're speaking two different languages in America. It sounds like American English, but the civic vocabulary is no longer shared. And so you can have somebody like we mentioned Jennifer Rubin earlier, or this other guy. I'm not sure how to pronounce his name, and I'm not good on pronunciation tonight, clearly, so I'm not even going to attempt it. But he's a New York Times contributor who went on a tear on Twitter last night, talking again, echoing the point that the Republican Party is an extremist party and they have to be broken down.
Is that the Nelson Mandela guy you're talking
about?
No,
this is a guy. I'm not even. You're going to make
try.
Are you going to make me try? All right.
Yes.
Wajahat Ali.
That's guilty.
Wajahat Ali.
Okay. Now I know you guys are playing.
No, he's not Lewis. Ben is actually being serious. He just doesn't know how to pronounce the name.
That's the guy's name. And so he goes on Twitter last night, and he's talking about how Biden needs to treat Republicans as the active threats to democracy that they are. And that and he's talking about Republicans as criminals.
So that's my point, Ben Boychuk.
And
what
so,
kind of moral compass is that?
But see, then I think about friends that I have close by who despise Trump, but yet somehow, we can have civilized meals together. And so there's something. Go ahead, Ben Stein.
Please go ahead, Ben. I beg your pardon for interrupting.
No, I'm almost. I don't want to say that they lack a moral compass. What I believe that there's a problem with our shared vocabulary, our shared civic vocabulary. We have profound differences in the way we view what America is supposed to be. This idea of who we are, right? Which Obama always talked about, and George W. Bush often talked about. But those things were often very different things when it came down to the substance of it. And that's the thing that I worry about, really. We have a republic here, and this republic is going to fall to pieces in no small part because we don't even agree what in the hell America is.
But Ben, I just want to say to you, a moral compass. If you are willing to listen, I've never in my wildest dreams, because you voted for Obama, didn't want to talk to you. I never would have wanted you fired.
Obama, what are you talking about?
No, he's talking to. You gotta say Boychuk. You gotta say Ben Boychuk or Ben Stein.
I never, but these people are literally calling. They're naming names. That they're calling for people to lose jobs, livelihoods. They are threatening people's existence. I don't know there is no, that's beyond dialogue. That is a lack of that is a massive gaping hole that those humans have inside them, that's what they want for others. There's nobody on this panel tonight that if there was that when Obama was president wished ill on others. None of us did. I could guarantee you that.
And that's a brilliant point. That is a very, very brilliant point. I love it a lot. I want to just make two more points before Lewis gets on.
Yeah.
One,
you can make as many points as you want.
Mr. Biden, thank you. Mr. Biden is from Delaware, or at least he used to be, what used to represent the state of Delaware, which is on the eastern shore of the Chesapeake Bay, which is one of the most beautiful parts of the United States of America. And it's incredibly, incredibly beautiful part. And Delaware makes some of the best fried chicken I have ever had in my life. I grew up near there. I used to spend a good part of the summer in Delaware, and they were making fried chicken all over the place. It was incredibly, unbelievably good. So let's have some respect for the state of Delaware. Second thing is, day by day, We stand up for our rights. Day by day, we do it in a polite, respectful way. Day by day, we persuade one or two people to look at things our way. I have my best friend from childhood was a man, still is very, very much alive, named David Scull, from one of the most prominent families in the United States of America. An incredibly smart guy. He's a big time Democrat, and I would not even in a million years accuse him of lacking a moral compass. He is one of the finest human beings I've ever known, and I suspect there are others. The idea that they all are this way is just it's the kind of idea a Democrat would have. It's not a Republican idea.
Yes, Lewis.
Well, I was just going to say, I agree with Ben Boychuk insofar as there's a large number of cultural amnesiacs, to update a phrase from Gore Vidal about the United States of amnesia. So if you don't know anything about your rights, if you don't know anything about the Constitution, if you don't know anything about the Bill of Rights, that's one thing. So I agree with Ben Boychuk, but I also believe, and I've said this on previous shows, that they don't, by and large, have much, if any, sense of humor. And if there's one thing that is common among people with a tyrannical mindset, whether it's the extreme left or the extreme right, they are humorless. That is one thread throughout history linking all of these disparate groups. No one can envision throwing a few shots of vodka back and laughing with Lenin, or cutting into a big slab of steak with that meat eater Adolf and laughing. Yes, he was a vegetarian, which should have been the first sign to the people of Germany, never mind Austria, that this guy's out of his mind. So they're humorless. They're humorless. Nothing's funny. Nothing. That offends me. That's offensive. That's racist. That's sexist.
And just for the record, and by the way, just for the record, I wasn't accusing all on the left. I'm referring simply to the people that are calling for naming names, and those people. I'm not saying, I believe most Democrats in their souls are good people. I'm referring to the people in these news organizations, and these people that are, or these people on these trolls on Twitter. That's who I'm referring to. I believe most people in America are good and decent humans. You know, I truly, in my heart of hearts, believe that. It's just 10% here, 10% here make us all want to kill each other sometimes.
Do I think John Meacham is a great guy? I don't know. I think less of him now that I know that he wrote or contributed to Joe Biden's speech at the virtual Democratic National Convention, and while being pro-Biden and openly supportive of him, never disclosed to media until they found out that, oh, by the way, the speech I'm praising, yeah, I wrote it.
And we are running out of time. It is amazing, though, by the way. He's right. It's amazing that John Meacham, the presidential historian, wrote.
That's great. Absolutely.
Historian.
Historian. The other point that I want brought up, Ben Boychuk brought up brilliantly. I don't want to miss this. And you see how I could compliment you, Ben Boychuk? He brought up a brilliant point yesterday in one of his posts, which was that this is the irony is just cutting. Is he brought up the point that he wants to appoint as Emmanuel's brother. What's his name? Ezekiel Emanuel.
Ezekiel Emanuel, yeah. I didn't want to bum Ben Stein out about
his form of palliative care, doctor, is that anyone 75 and above should forego medical care.
So he basically.
Where did this come from? You made this up.
No, he's not.
Ben Stein.
He's a golem, Ben, and he's a real life monster.
Lewis,
wait a minute. Who is this guy again?
Ezekiel Emanuel is the old elder brother of Rahm Emanuel, and he's a medical doctor. He was a professor of medical ethics at Hopkins, or where was he? Anyway, professor of medical ethics, had let's call it an infamous essay in the Atlantic Monthly a few years back, in which he said, the headline was, why I want to die at 75. And he goes at great length to explain why one's quality of life and the quality of life of one's children and grandchildren and all these things add up to, maybe it's better just to croak at 75. Now,
I totally disagree. I have a lot of fun. I'm 75.
Oh,
really, 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 really.
You have a lust for life.
Well, if
doubtless.
you're based on your web browsing history, I have no doubt.
Doubtless. So get this. So Ezekiel,
Real life is a lot better.
Ezekiel Emanuel is on Joe Biden's COVID-19 task force.
Oh no.
No, but think about the irony in what Ben is bringing up. He's on his task force, but how stupid is Joe Biden at 78 to hire somebody that he believes should be dead at 75?
Exactly.
And I don't know how you could top that. I want to thank everybody, obviously, but we're going to have next episode. I want to have a little fun. I'm going to post something, or Ben is planning on posting something fun tonight. He brought this up to me the other day because he brought up, like, we're living in the invasion of the body snatchers. And I'm going to post on Parler because I'm curious from everybody. So don't say it here. Like, what movie, if you could compare to what's going on right now, what movie, if there is a movie or a TV show, is comparable to what we're going through as a society right now?
Okay.
And on that note, that's all the time we have for for this.
Aren't you going to ask us where they can find us?
Come on.
Of the world according to Stein. I want to thank Ben Boyd.
That's not the world according to Stein.
I want to
slow down.
I want to thank everybody for where people can find us. Ben Boychuk, tell people where they could find us since
Well, you can find the show on YouTube. You're watching it. If you just tuned in, you're way too late. Subscribe to us, please, at The World According to Ben Stein. Like us on Facebook at The World According to Ben Stein. Follow us on Parler at Ben Stein and at The World According to Ben Stein. We need more followers on that one. You can find me at BBOYCHUK3. That's BBoychuk3. And by all means, check in to American Greatness, which is
an American Spectator.
Well, Ben can tout the Spectator. I'm not touting the Spectator. I don't work for the Spectator. I'm managing editor of American Greatness.
Spectator, but they're great people.
Listen, I love the American Spectator. I subscribed to it for years and years and years and years. I love the American Spectator. I've never been in it, but I love the American Spectator. I'm managing editor of American Greatness, and you can find that at www.amgreatness.com.
And by the way, Lewis is a huge fan of your work at AM Greatness. I mean, at American Spectator. He's been reading you for probably 35, 40 years.
Thank you so much. I am humbled.
And Lewis, tell people really where they could find you on Parler. It's what?
Spawn Ranch. It's L Fine. F-E-I-N.
Is there no end to it? Is there no end? Have you, at long last, Senator, have you no shame? At long last, Senator, have you no shame?
He lost his privileges for the night. I want to remind everybody to follow us at The World According to Ben Stein on YouTube, at Parler. It's at Ben Stein. Like him, like us all. Subscribe, like everybody. And until next time, we'll see you. Thank you so much, everybody, for listening to us tonight. Thank you.